Hey there, Mr. Choose here with some bare algebra. So let's factor GCFs out of polynomials. Make sure you give this a thumbs up if you like it. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. That helps me push it out to more people. So if you were able to watch the original, there will be a link at the end back to it where I did 2 examples and explained this step by step more slowly. You would have seen these 2 challenge problems that I challenged students to do. There was an error, a mistake. So I had written 38a squared minus 47ab squared. It should be minus 57ab squared or it's not going to work out. So if you actually did as I asked you to and work these 2 challenge problems, redo this one real fast. It's a negative 57. All right, so now let's get to it. Now, if you remember, I talked about using factor trees to factor each term completely, circling the common terms, and then factoring out that GCF. So let's do that quickly. So I've got 25x cubed. That ends up being 5 times 5 times x, because 5 is the smallest prime factor that I can factor out of 25 evenly. So I'm going to list each of these underneath it with the complete factorization. All right, so now I do my middle term, my negative 45 x to the 4th. Well, in my instruction video when I was explaining how to do this, you always have to factor out a negative 1 first. Now the lowest prime is 3 times 15, and 15 is 3 times 5. So these are the factors of negative 45, and then I have to bring down all 4 x's to have all my complete factorization. Now I write that term underneath my 25x cubed. So it's negative 1 times 3 times 3 times 5 times x. All right? So now I'm going to erase this so that I can do my last term with the factor tree. Now in challenge 2, I won't use factor trees like I did in the instruction examples. So I have 65x squared. The smallest prime I can evenly divide 65 by, which would make it a factor, is 5. 5 times 13, bring down my 2 x's. So I write down that term underneath them. And that is a positive, so it's 5 times 13 times x times x. All right, so now what is the procedure? I'm circling what's common in all of them. So if you look, I don't have a negative 1 in these 2, but I've got a 5 here, a 5 here, and a 5 here. So I'm going to circle that. Now, sometimes I will take and do one circle, but look how that would zigzag. That's why I didn't do it in that case. So I know that my GCF is going to be 5, maybe, times something. Well, I don't have another 5 here. X. There you go. So I'm just going to put a box around it so that it doesn't get confusing. So that's times x. Is there anything else in common? There sure is. And I'm going to put a little triangle around these. So it ends up being 5x squared. All right? So now I take this GCF and I write it outside of parentheses where I'm going to reverse the distributive property. And then I'm going to take and have 3 terms in here that when I do the distributive property, it's going to reverse. Well, some algebra students at this point say, oh, I already know, Mr. Chu. I know what you multiply 5x squared by to get 25x to the 3rd. But if you don't, look and see what hasn't been circled. 5x. It is that simple. All right? Most students, or let's say some students, will automatically, that light bulb will come on, they'll say, 5x squared times, and they'll tell you what it equals to get negative 45x to the fourth. But if you don't see it, negative 1 times 3 is negative 9x squared minus 9x squared. So don't make it harder what it is, but then do it correctly. And what do you multiply 5x squared by to get 65x squared? And you'll get better at this the more you do it. Well, what's not circled? 13. All right. How do we check this? Distributive property. 25 x squared times x is x cubed minus 45 x to the fourth plus 65 x squared. And if you look, I get my original, which means I am correct. All right, hopefully you're able to do that one right. Now, let's look at challenge 2, and remember you had to change this to minus 57ab squared or it's not going to work. So I'm just going to write them down now without using a factor tree and show you how I would do this in my head. I'd say, what's the lowest prime? 2 times what? 19. 19's a prime. A squared is A times A. Then I do negative 57ab squared. I have to do negative 1 first. Then I do 3 times 19 A, B, B. And then I do my 76 AB, which is 4 times 19 AB. Okay, remember what you do next? You circle what's common. So let's use a circle. I don't have my 2, negative 1, and 4, but I've got a 19. So my GCF is 19 times, here's an A, and then I don't have a B here, so I can't do any more. So that's 19A is my GCF. So remember what you do now? I take and write my GCF outside of parentheses, and then inside of here I'm going to put these terms so that when I multiply out using the distributive property, I get the same thing. Well, how do I get it? Well, look and see what hasn't been circled. 2A. That's how simple this is. Look at what hasn't been circled. Negative 1 times 3 times B squared. Look what hasn't been circled. 4B. And then I from Indiana, where Reggie Miller used to shoot threes, would say, boom, baby. All right, so let's check it using the distributive property. 19A times 2A is 38A squared. Well, that's what I had for my first term. And then I take my 19A times negative 3B, which is negative 57AB squared. There it is. And then I take my 19A times my 4B, which is 76AB. There it is. And I know I did it right. So make sure you like this if it's helpful. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Share this with other people that maybe need the algebra help. There will be a link up here where you can go back to the original 2 problems. Down here will be the playlist of all the factoring polynomial videos. And then there could be other videos and playlists over here that you can click on that will be helpful, taking you to other videos in my YouTube channel. And remember, I am Mr. Chu. This is Bear Algebra. And tell your friends that Mr. Chu wants to help you learn the math. and I'll see you in my next video.